Hello everyone, my name is Yash Sureka and today we're going to just review my audit certified copies and compare my answers with the suggested answers given by ICI for the November 24 attempt for the audit paper. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Assuming that you can see my screen. Yeah, yeah. So first things first, I think in audit, what is very important is securing maximum marks in MCQs. So if out of 30 you can manage to score 22 or 24 in MCQs, then it would be a game changer in audit because in audit a lot of emphasis is given on writing the keywords in the descriptive part. So if in MCQs if you can manage to score at least 22, 24, then the path to 40 becomes very easy, or rather 60 becomes very easy. And for MCQs, nothing special is to be done based on whatever you've studied in the concept book that will suffice. And you can also solve MCQs of the mock test papers of your relevant attempt and previous two attempts. And I think from this attempt, ICI has also released a new MCQ booklet for CA final audit. So you can also refer to that MCQ booklet to start to practice MCQs. So starting with the comparison of the answers and how do you go about writing the answers and how do you identify which answer or which answer should come. So I'll just come to this. All right. Yeah. So I will start with question number 4, which was the first question which I wrote. So in this question, if you can see, uh, JPP and associates have been appointed as auditors of a multinational jewelry company. There were more than 100 showrooms and all these. But and from if you read from here, during the course of audit, from the matters communicated with TCWG, uh, the auditors determined certain matters as most significant in the audit of financial statements of current period, which are related to company's offenses under PAMLA. Now, and the entire story is given. Now, in this question, there are two questions. If you read it carefully, what would be the considerations of JPP and associates in determining matter requiring significant attention in performing the audit, and state the introductory language that would be used while communicating such matter in the report. So, if you just read what I've highlighted, the highlighted part of most significant data in the audit of financial statements would give you an idea that this question relates to SA 701, which is the key audit matter paragraph. And in that, if you read the question carefully, there are two sub questions. The first one is what are the considerations in determining the matter requiring significant attention in performing the audit, which means what are the factors which will be considered in determining whether a particular matter is significant or not. And if you go to SS701, there are those three points which you have to write in this answer. And the second question is the language of the key order matter paragraph. So if I just open my answers, yeah. So and there's no separate marks for writing the correct essay number and name, but that gives a good impression on the checker. So what I did was I made a list of the names of essays, all the essay, SRE, and SAE, and I stuck it on my study desk wall. And I used to just refer it once daily, and because of which I could learn all the names and number of all the essays. So just starting my answer with this essay number 701, the entire name of the essay, and the first question is what are the factors requiring consideration. So those three factors I've just written, and I've highlighted whatever the relevant keywords are in that. So higher assess risk of material misstatement, significant judgment, and significant events and transactions. So these 3 points have 2 marks, or 2.5 or 2 marks. So I was given 2 marks out of 2.5, 3 marks for this first sub question. And I have not written the entire statement from the study material, concept book, whatever, but I've make sure that I've written the keywords which are there, and I've also highlighted with them with the pen or pencil, so the checker only focuses on those keywords, and since these keywords matches with the suggested answers, then he would give me marks. So if I just take you to suggested answers for this answer, see, areas of high risk of material misstatement, significant auditor's judgment, and significant events and transactions. So if you see, I've not see if point two, I've not written the entire 3-4 lines in this in my answer. I've just written matters relate to area which require significant judgment. But the significant judgment word is matching. The keywords are largely matching, so it's given me 2 marks out of 2 marks on this sub question. And the second sub part was on the language of the key audit matter paragraph. So a little bit about the fact of the case, that since auditor has determined this matter as key audit matter paragraph, and this should be the language of the key audit matter paragraph. And 1 mark for this and 1 mark for the facts above. So out of 5, he's given me 4 in this question. And yes, and even in the suggested answers, they've in the language they've mentioned what is the key audit matter paragraph, and there is no separate opinion on these matters. So if my language of the paragraph differs a little from the suggested answers, but still the checker is considered, given me 1 mark out of 2 on this part. So overall, it's given me 4 on 5 in this question. And how do you identify again? You just see whatever is highlighted here, and that would help you to identify how do you identify which is the correct answer to this question. Coming to second question, C. Rajni is appointed as a statutory auditor of this STK, and for auditing complete set of FS, and she was also assigned audit of PPE. And C. Rajni decides to give an adverse opinion based on audit observations during the complete course of audit, and she wants to give an unmodified opinion on the PPE. So these highlighted lines, which says that she was given a complete set audit as well as an audit of PPE, should give you an idea that this answer is from SA 805. And if you go down, yeah, here the question is comment with reference to the relevant SA regarding the opinion to be given by C. Rajni in the audit report of separate engagement of PPE. So with regard to SA 805, what the checker, the examiner wants you to write your comment on the opinion she wants to give. What she wants to give a unmodified opinion on PPE, but an adverse opinion on complete set of financial statements. Simple as that, SA 805. So again, if I come to my answer, see SA 805, the entire name of SA is written. Even though it is correct, there is no marks separately allotted, I think, for the SA name and number, but it gives a good reputation on the checker. And if I come to suggested answers for this question, so essay 805, the name of the essay, and a little about the facts of the case. And then there are those 3 points which has to be written. Uh, 3 points where we can give an unmodified opinion on a separate engagement, that is PPE, while giving an adverse opinion on the main complete set of audited financial statements. So those 3 points that not prohibited by law or regulation, not prohibited, does not constitute major element, and the report is published separately. These 3 points should ideally come, and for these 3 points, the checker is given me 3 marks. And these kind of the language, the keywords matches with the suggested answers. So I've gotten marks for this. Is not published together and does not constitute major element, major portion. Hmm. And again, the little bit about the facts of the case, that she has audit for both the PPA and complete set of financial statements. She wants to give adverse opinion on complete set, but unmodified on PPE. And accordingly, she can do so. She can give an unmodified opinion on PPE if provided the above conditions as specified above are fulfilled. So it's a conditional answer because we do not know whether PP is a major portion of the financials or not. So based on that, if the conditions above, these 3 conditions are fulfilled, then she can give an unmodified opinion on PPE. So the idea is you can write the answer in own points, but these 3 words are very important. These 3 points, and the keywords of these 3 points should come in your answer and you should also highlight all the relevant points in the answer. That would help the check your answer uh, in a much better way. Coming to question 4C. Yeah. So 4C is from the emerging areas paragraph chapter, wherein we were asked the role of auditor in climate related risk. So it's a very theoretical answer which is there in the book. There are a couple of points in that answer, and I kind of knew only the keyword for some of the points. So I did not know the entire answer, but I knew keywords for a couple of points. So based on whatever I knew, I wrote the entire answer based on my common sense and whatever keywords I could highlight in the answer. So increasing pressure from users of financial statements, uh, should determine whether any disclosure is given by the management in the financial statements, and the auditor should consider whether it is appropriate to put an emphasis of matter paragraph in the financial statement for this. And that's it, based on my general understanding. And out of 4 is given me 2 marks. So this entire question, I did not know the answer entirely, but I just applied my brain on what could be the answers, and I could remember a couple of keywords from the answer. So that is how I could manage to write my answers on my own, this answer, and highlight on the relevant keywords. So just I'll just show you this. The auditor in the report may include an UOM para to draw attention. So I remembered in this answer there is a point on UOM para. So I kind of made my point, drafted my own point on UOM para, and I made sure that I highlight the EOM matter, emphasis of matter paragraph in my answer to make sure that checker, because checker will have this to compare your answers to. So if he sees emphasis matter paragraph, EOM paragraph, then he will certainly give you marks saying that it is correct. Yes. So even if you don't know the entire answer, you can frame your answer in your own words, but make sure you can write couple of keywords from the answer so the checker can give you 2 on 4 on 3 on 3 on 4 for that answers. Coming to question 3. Hmm, Question 3. Hmm. So the question 3 is basically a question where a CA has done couple of violations, and he is for an appeal before an appellate authority. But here in the appeal, he is given false documents or false statements. And and based on these facts, there are 3 sub-questions in this question. So the first is comment on the violation of provision of CA Act and 1949. So what the checker is expecting in this answer is, what is the violation under the CA Act? So he has already done a couple of violations under clause 4 and clause 5 here, which are given in the question. What further he's what which is the other violation which you can derive from the question is what the checker wants to see. And accordingly, if you can see, he's given false facts to the appellate authority. So that is a given, that is a violation under clause 3, part 2 of second schedule. So if you can identify that violation, this will give you 2 marks out of 5 marks question. And in all the PE questions, if you can write the correct clause number and the entire clause, they will certainly give you 2 marks out of 5 or 2 marks out of 4 in those questions. Because in all my PE questions, 2 marks are allotted only for the correct clause number and the entire clause. If you can see clause 3, part 2, second schedule I've mentioned the entire clause here includes the entire clause, and he's straight away given me 2 marks for the clause and the clause number. So if you can please learn all the P clauses line by line, and I try to identify which clause it is and write the correct clause number and schedule. So that will fetch you 2 out of 5 in all these P questions. And I've briefly explained the facts in this question. The second question was, before which authority matters would have been placed and maximum punishment. So if I just go to suggested answers for this, the clause 1, this again, first answer was clause 3, part 2, second schedule, and the entire clause and the relevant facts was given. Simple. Part 2, uh, since he is uh, since he is found of professional misconduct under both first and second schedule, the matter would go to disciplinary committee. But I did not know this I was confused, so I wrote board of discipline in this answer, which in my answer, which was incorrect. And then the fine was correct, whatever the fine was. So out of 2 is only 1 mark here because this is incorrect. So And the third one was whether the appeal has been filed in time. Yes, the appeal has been filed within 90 days period given under the clause. So 1 mark for that. So again, 4 on 5 in this question. This, if I could have written this word disciplinary committee instead of board of discipline, he would have given me 5 on 5 in this question. But again, the entire idea of a PE question is to write the correct clause number and clause that will fetch you 2 marks. Just explain the facts of the case in brief and give your conclusion whether he is guilty, not guilty, whatever, and that will carry 1 marks. So 2 marks for clause, 1 for conclusion, and 2 for general explanation and the facts of the case. If I just go to question B here, 3B. So 3B is an ideal question to understand how do you identify the correct question. See, MK Electronics is a listed company with 8 subsidiaries spread across various states. Financial statements of MK are audited by CA Amar, the principal auditor. CA Amar relies on the work of other auditor. And you are required to explain procedure that CA Amar will perform to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to ensure that work is adequate, and explain how will you document the working papers with respect to the subsidiaries audited by auditors, and what do we need to document. So this is a classic question of SA 600, I think. Yeah, SA 600, using the work of other auditor. So just reading by this point 1 and point 2, you should be able to identify that CA Amar is a principal auditor and he will rely on the work of other auditor. So this highlighted part should give you an idea that this question is from SS 600. And accordingly, if you just have to answer sub point 1, uh, if you go to SS 600, there's straight away answers on procedures to be performed by principal auditor if he wants to rely on the work of the or other auditor. So those points you have to write in your own words, but those keywords again should come. I've highlighted all the relevant keywords which I thought uh, were relevant, and accordingly, for say given me 3 marks here only for the first sub part, which is what procedures will be performed by principal auditor while relying on the work of other auditor. So accordingly, I've just mentioned most of the points are, see, here the points are in one point, but I've broken my points into 5 sub points, and 3 or 4 of them matches with the whatever was mentioned here, and accordingly is given with 3 marks here. And I've also highlighted the relevant keywords wherever required in the answer. And the second one was on the documentation part. What would you document in this? What would the principal auditor document if he has to rely on the work of other auditor? And so whatever was the answer, it's straight away given in the SS 600. If you just write, see, my answer does not match exactly with the answer given in the suggested answer, but in my answer, whatever relevant fact, that extent of component documented by this, and if the other auditor is giving modified opinion, then whether the modification is of such nature and extent. So these words should come in your answer, and you should make sure that you highlight these relevant keywords for checker to check and give you marks. So it's given me 3 marks above for the first answer, 2 for the second answer, and given me 5 on 5 in this answer. Because my answer largely matches with suggested answers and the keywords are highlighted. So he will just only check the keywords in these questions, and if those matches, he will give you straight away marks. So make sure that you highlight whatever relevant keywords are there in the answer. Now coming to question 3C. CAP has a diverse range of suppliers for raw materials components. This is TK. The question is, discuss the ways in which frauds can be committed to supplier ledger and explain procedures that CAK will adopt to investigate the potential fraud. So this question is, I think, from investigation chapter, wherein we had to tell what are the ways in which a fraud can be committed through supplier ledgers, and how as a CA you will adopt to investigate the potential fraud. So in this direct questions, you largely can understand from the last 2-3 lines of the question, okay, what is being asked, and accordingly you can always discuss, think of the answer and write the answer. So straight away answers of it's a straight away answer in the chapter. How can a fraud be committed to supplier ledger? So accepting purchases at price originally higher, bogus invoices, hiding the credit note, withdrawing unclaimed balances, falsely crediting the account of supplier. So these 3-4 points, out of a 4 marker question, I have written 2 marks for the first 2 marks allotted for the first sub question, which was ways in which a supplier fraud can happen. The other 2 marks were for procedures which CAK may adopt. So reconciliation at a point in time, check internal controls over purchase orders, and ensure all credit notes issued by supplier are duly accounted in the books. So 1 mark is given me for this second sub point. So 3 on 4. So the idea is, again, what this is a straight away answer. You should know what are the ways that fraud can happen, and you can mold the answer in your own language. But again, those highlighted part in my answer should appear in your answers as well for the checker to give you marks. If I go to suggested answer for this point, hmm, see, suppressing the credit notes issued by supplier, withdrawing the corresponding amount. So withdrawing the unclaimed balances, withdrawing amounts unclaimed by supplier, accepting purchase invoices at considerably higher than market price. So all these points are there in my answers, even though it in my language. But again, these highlighted uh, part is there in my answer and is given me marks for that answer. Simple as that. Coming to question 2A. 2A is again P question. Hmm. So 2A So 2A was a question where you as an auditor had to give conditional acceptance for a government company's audit and discuss with reference to CA Act whether N has complied with the CA Act or not. So now in case of government companies, you can always give a conditional acceptance because there is limited time to accept the appointment of the assignment. And this comes from clause 8, part 1, first schedule. So simply clause 8, part 1, first schedule, you write the entire clause again. So see, writing the entire clause has given me 2 out of 5 marks. So if you can manage to write the entire clause, learn those clauses and write, it carries a weightage. It carries 2 mark, at least 40% of your answer. Then you write the general gyan of that clause. Then you explain the facts of the case, that in case of audit of government companies, uh, there is a limited time to accept the engagement. So you can give a conditional acceptance subject to professional objections received from previous auditor. So these highlighted parts that which are highlighting in my answer should be there ideally in your answers as well. And you can, it is subjective, but you can also always highlight whatever is relevant for you. Whatever you think is relevant for checker to understand the facts of the case, you highlight that with a pencil in your answers. And simply then the fact of the case, in instant case, CN has given conditional acceptance, and accordingly it is in line with the clause 8 part 1 first schedule, so he is not guilty of this. See, then conclusion has 1 mark. So in a 5 marker question, 2 marks are for fact, 2 marks are for clause, 1 mark for conclusion, and 2 marks for other facts of the case and other general proposition of the answer. So make sure that you write a clear conclusion that he's guilty, not guilty, because that will carry 1 mark these questions. That is important. Okay. Now coming to question 3B, 2B. See, 2B, I'll just, yeah. So I spoke to a couple of people I reviewed a couple of certified copies, and what I see is in question 2B, they just read the last 2 lines that guide him as to the matters to be included in the audit documentation in the scenario. And by seeing the word audit documentation, they moved to SA 230 audit documentation, and based on that, they wrote some answer from that essay. But if you read the entire question, just the highlighted part, let's say CUV Limited as internal audit function, and the engagement partner decides to take direct assistance from internal auditor for certain areas of audit. So this is a classic case of internal audit question wherein you cannot just read the last 2 lines and answer the question. You have to read the last 2 lines in the context of the entire question. The entire question is for internal audit function, wherein the engagement partner has taken direct assistance from internal auditor. And in that context, what should be the part of the audit documentation? So it is not a question of SA 230, but a question of SA 610. And that, so even this question has 2 sub questions in this. The first one is CAL right in excluding the working papers of the internal auditor, and you guide him as to matters to be included in audit documentation in this scenario. Simple. So when you move to SA 610, I'll just go to suggested answers. Yeah. Again, try to write the essay number and the entire name. That will give a good impression on the checker. You start with this. Then the following things should be there in the audit documentation. See, evaluation of threat to objectivity, basis and extent of work allotted to internal auditor, written agreements, who reviewed the work and extent of review, and working papers of internal auditor to provide direct assistance. So these highlighted 5 words, 5 points should be there. See, this that would not match exactly with the suggested answers, but again, see the main part, the highlighted part should be there in your answers as well. Basis for decision, who reviewed the work performed, written agreement, working papers. So these 5 points should be there in your answers, which will help you to uh, reconcile and get marks. So see, out of five, 3 marks given for this, just these 5 points, 1 mark for the conclusion. Yeah, 2 marks for conclusion. So there are two sub questions. The first one was factors to be included. These are the factors. And second one was whether CA was correct in excluding the audit documentation prepared by the internal auditor. So based on this essay, he is not correct. He should include that. So CAL is not right in excluding the working papers of the internal auditor. So 1 mark for this. So he's again given 5 on 5 on this. So the structure is again two sub questions. Make sure you answer both the questions. First question at 3 marks, second question at 2 marks, and you give a clear conclusion whether he's guilty, not guilty, whether he's right in excluding, not excluding. So give a clear conclusion, and that would also carry 1 mark. And how do you identify? Do not just go to the last line of the questions. In these such questions, you read the last line in the context of the entire question. What is being asked and how do you answer that question? That will give you an idea. Okay. Uh, question 2C. So question 2C, I think, was from digital auditing, and that was a chapter which I skipped. Uh, hmm, hmm. So the question largely wants you to give your how will you evaluate the controls around the vendor setup and modification? So I did not know answer to this question, but based on whatever I think, what my general understanding of audit, whatever I could think, I tried to cover those 3 4 points in this question, and it's given me 1 on 4, which is fair because these points do not exactly match with the suggested answers. But based on what, if I were the auditor, what would, how would I evaluate the controls around vendor modification and setup? That is what I have written in the answer, and he's given me 1 on 4. So even if you do not know answer to a particular question, that is completely fine. You can make your answer in your own words based on your understanding of audit. And if the points are sensible, the checker may give you 1 or 2 mark out of 4 or 5 in that question as well. Coming to question 6. So question 6A was a straight away question on the provisioning requirements, whether they are sufficient, not sufficient. So you simply had to again write what is the requirement and what is the what is the current provisioning. So requirement as per the NBFC Act, and what is the what should be the provisioning amount based on the amount given in the question. And then you have to simply give a conclusion whether the provisioning was adequate or not adequate. So CAM was of the opinion that the provisioning done in the balance sheet is not appropriate, is not sufficient. So we have to first explain the provisioning norms, this part, and then give what should be the total provision, which is 5.9 crores. And the provisioning done currently is 5.50 crores, which is not sufficient. So CAM's opinion is correct, as NBFC is not correctly made provision for standard and doubtful assets. Simple as that. And 5.9 crore should be the provisioning amount for this company. And he's giving me 4 on 5 because I wrote this incorrect. Doubtful assets ka provisioning is incorrect in my answer. So that is why he's deducted 1 mark for that. Otherwise, I should have been 30%. Yeah. So otherwise, my answer is fairly correct. So it's given me 4 on 5. And you would see that for most of the questions, I have not written more than 1 or 1.5 side of answer. You did not write extra gyan in the question. Just keep your answers to the point. 1 page, 1.5 page is sufficient. Or for larger questions, you can maximum write 2 page. There's no point going beyond 2 pages in your answers. The ideal structure can be the facts of the case in case of P or Caro questions, the clause, the facts, and the conclusion. That simply will suffice in your answers. And you need not write the entire fact of the case again. What you can do is you can summarize the fact in your own words in, let's say, 3 4 lines, and give a clear conclusion, because conclusion in all these questions carry 1 mark. So 1 mark for every conclusion. So try to ensure that you give a correct and clear conclusion in all of your answers. And if I go to essay 40, next question, 6C is I've written. So 6B was something that I could not recollect in the exam, so I left that question. C 6 C, again CAF is the CFO of ABC Insurance Company, and he has a practice of getting the commission amount from the agent. So based on clause 2 part 2 of first schedule, he a CA is employed. CA employed cannot accept commission as a part of remuneration. So again, see clause 2 part 2 for schedule, write the entire correct clause. Again, write the entire clause. You have to make sure that you write entire clause. See, this is a 4 marker question. And again, in the 4 mark question, 2 marks are given for correct clause and correct clause numbering, and 1 mark for clear conclusion that he is guilty of professional misconduct. So out of a 4 mark question, 3 marks are given. 2 marks for clause, 1 mark for facts and other points, and 1 mark for conclusion. So my clause and my conclusion is correct. The checker has straight away given me 3 mark on 4 mark. Maybe if I could have written a more about the clause, a little explanation, then he would have also given me 4 on 4. But that is fine. See, clause and the conclusion are very important in all these P questions. Make sure that you are writing the correct clause and the correct conclusion. The next question attempted is question 1A. Yeah. So question 1 was a straight away question, uh, which discuss the factors that are considered by CET for monitoring the quality control of engagement. SQC1 का question है. It is very simple, straight away question of monitoring. So, and see, in such direct questions, you can identify what is being asked in the last two by just reading the last 2-3 lines. But I would suggest that you read the entire question once to understand the actual question in the entire context. So in this question, even after by reading the entire question, you will conclude that it is from SQC1 monitoring ka part. But otherwise, I would prefer to read the entire question once to conclude ki where is this question coming from. And so question 1 is simple monitoring. 5 points you have to write that what would be done in monitoring. So see SQC1, the entire name of the SQC again I've written, and those 5 points, 5-6 points which are there. See, effectively designed and implemented, where the new developments are reflected, entrust responsibility of monitoring to engagement partner, uh, dealing with complaints and allegations, taking remedial action, and taking appropriate action when deficiencies are identified. And similar is there in the suggested as well. Appropriate remedial action, deficiencies identified, complaints and allegations, monitoring, and new developments. So see, new developments, quality control policies and procedures designed and implemented, complaints and allegations. These are the words that you will have to write for the checker to give you marks, because he will compare your answers to these suggested answers. And if he does not find these keywords in your answer, trust me, he will not give you marks. So keeping make sure that you are having all these key points in your answers as well, in your own words. But again, these keywords should come, and make sure that you highlight what is highlighted in my answer for the checker to easily check your answer and give you marks. So in this question, out of 5 is given me 4 marks, which is fair. Again, clause, now the B, question 1B is on Caro 2020, wherein the inventory was pegged for some working capital, and the books of accounts and the stock statements do not tally. So again, so simply if I just go to my answer for Caro question, again, clause 2 para 3 of Caro 2020, make sure you write the correct clause which is there in the Caro ka chapter. See whether the company has been granted working capital limit of more than 5 crores, and whether the quarterly statements are in agreement with books of accounts. See, this point and the facts of the case would give you 2 mark in Caro questions as well. So make sure that you do Caro and P's clauses very thoroughly. because these carry a good weightage in the answers. And I just second point was to explain the above answer, above clause. The third point was the facts of the case, that in this case that working capital limit of 7 crore has been sanctioned, and the stock statement are overvalued by 15%. So based on the above provisions, uh, and provisions of CARO 2020, engagement partner will have to report under clause 2 that, simple again, just repeat whatever was mentioned above, that T has been granted working capital of more than 5 crores, and books of accounts and stock statement do not tally, and hence the contention of CFO is incorrect. That the contention of the CFO was that that we do not have to mention this in CARO report, but that is incorrect. So correct. So give a proper conclusion that the CFO is incorrect, and just explain the facts of the case above. And that has given me 4 on 5 in this question. The structure is very simple. The correct clause number of the CARO with the clause, you go, then correct clause number, uh, then the facts of the case, and then what would you report in CARO report under which clause, that and this part generally would be in line with the above, with the clause. And how do you identify again which clause of CARO should come? So you should be very thorough with CARO clauses to identify this. If you just go here, so this question has two hints given. First is that there has been a loan taken for working capital of 7 crores or something, and then mm, that the management has decided to peg the value of stock statements, and it submitted to the bank that the value is value with a hike of 15%. So these two highlighted points should give you an idea that this question is from CARO. And here it clearly says it is a question from CARO, and for which clause of CARO you have to read the question entirely and highlight whichever relevant point you think will give you an idea. So this question clearly says that it is hypothecation of stocks and submission of stock statements. So this is a part of inventory. A lot of people have mentioned fraud wala clause of CARO in this answer, which is incorrect. It may sound as a fraud, but if you go into the details of the answer of the question, you will identify that this is a question of inventory, because inventory clearly has a clause where you have to report whether there has been a working capital limit of more than 5 crores and whether the stock statements are in agreement with books of accounts. So though that point will give you an idea and highlight of these question of identifying the correct answer. 1C is for review of interim financial statements, wherein what would be the preconditions of accepting a review engagement. So SRE 2400 is largely similar to all the essays that you study earlier, and I kind of knew that this answer is very similar to essay 210 ka answer. So I just wrote the correct SRE number and the entire SRE, and this again is from the list which I made. SRE essays ka list and the name, and I read it once daily for 2 months. So that will give you an idea of the entire SRE name and number, and that gives a good impression on the checker. And just those basic, whether FRF is acceptable or not, whether management acknowledges responsibility for preparation of financial statements, whether auditor or practitioner has been given with all information, additional information, and unrestricted access. So simple answer, and you highlight whatever the relevant points are there, and you should be through with this answer. It's a 4 marker answer. He's given me 2 marks. My points are largely matching with the answer, but again, that is subjective on the checker. So you should always carry 5 to 6 marks of margin of safety. Whether you may have written the correct answer, the correct points, the checker may not allot you full marks for that question or answer. So that is there in the checking. See, determine whether FRF is acceptable or not. So I've written my language, but again, I've highlighted whatever the relevant points were, that applicable FRF is acceptable. Agreement of management that it acknowledges responsibility for preparation of financial statements, internal controls, and to provide practitioner with all information, additional information, and unrestricted access. So you can simply write these answers in your own point, and that should be sufficient. And how do you study about go about P and CARO? So what I was referring to Shubham Keswani's book. So what I did was for PE and Caro, there are revision videos on YouTube of half an hour of PE and 20 minutes of Caro. So I used to listen to those revision videos at least once daily for 50 days continuously. So that helped me in learning the exact clause of Caro and P and the exact wordings of those for every clauses. Because when you hear that video for let's say 50 times, by the 20th time you will understand, you will automatically remember which clause says what, and you will also remember the keywords from the clause. So if you can manage to leverage those videos and listen to them once daily till your exams, then P and Caro should not be a bigger issue. And as I've shown you, P and Caro, writing the correct clause will fetch you marks, 2 marks out of 5 marks. So that is very important, writing the correct clause and number. And regarding the essay number, essay names and number, you can make a list of essay names and SRE SAE names with their relevant numbers and stick it on a wall. And you can refer it once daily before sleeping for till your exams again. So that will also help you to write the correct essay number and essay clause. And finally, on identifying the correct question, for most of the questions, the idea you would get an idea of what was being asked in the last 2 3 lines, but some question can be challenging. So I would suggest that you uh, articulate that you read the entire question once and understand what is being asked in the context of the facts given in the question. So that would help you to identify the correct answer to the questions. And lastly, on and in audit paper, the reading time of 15 minutes is very important. In those 15 minutes, what you can do is you can simply read whatever is asked in the all the questions except for question number one, and you can note down those keywords or subpoints with your pencil besides the question. And if you're not able to do that in 15 minutes, I would say take 5 minutes more. Take 20 minutes, but read all the questions and write whatever is the relevant answer to those questions, at least those keywords and subpoints with the on the question paper itself. And when you write your answers in the exam, then you can just leverage those points written with pencil, and you can accordingly easily write those answers in your answer book without thinking much. So you have to do all the thinking in the first 20 25 minutes of the paper, and make sure that you write it with the pencil on the question paper if it is allowed, and you can then leverage those points written, and you can simply copy paste and elaborate on those points in the main answer, which will help you fetch marks. And lastly, in audit, you do not need to write large answers, long answers. Keep your answers to the point. That will help you manage time as well, complete paper on time, and do justice to every question. And MCQs के लिए MCQs are very important. Make sure that you can manage to score 20 to 24 in MCQs, because MCQs are something which is not to the subject of the checker. If your circling is correct, they will give you 2 marks for every MCQ. Practice MCQs. There is nothing separate to be done for MCQs. Make sure that you read your concept book thoroughly. Even for a chapter or two which you leave in exam, make sure you go through it once or twice, because if that chapter comes in MCQ, then you have an idea of what to tick and what not to tick. And for MCQs, you can practice from MCQ booklets, MTPs, RTPs, and past papers, and that would help you manage audit largely. And how do you remember keywords is you have to revise audit day in, day out. Let's say you do a first revision of audit in 15 days, and your second revision comes after 2 months. So by the time your second revision comes, you would largely forget what you had studied in the first revision. And for that to not happen, what I would suggest is if you can pick up audit 1 hour daily and keep revising those keywords again and again, so that would make sure that when you come to a second detailed revision of audit, you at least have some recollection of audit. And what different I did was I kept my audit ka final revision, which is the third revision, just before my FR's paper. So if let's say my FR exam is on 3rd November, and if I'm going to start FR from 27th October, so 24, 25, 26, 3 days I studied audit prior to FR. So audit was very fresh in my mind when I was studying it for 1.5 days. And even when I could not cover everything in 1.5 days, I had studied those concepts in my 3-day revision, at least glance through those concepts. So I had a general idea of what is to be written, and I could make my own answers with those relevant keywords. So that would largely help you in audit. If there's anything you want me to specifically address, or you want me to specifically speak on, or connect with me, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn and WhatsApp, and I would make sure that I reply to you on those points. Thank you.